Hi everybody. This is November 9th, 2024, and I'm on the R3 bus, which has Wi-Fi from Maple Ridge, British Columbia to Coquitlam, British Columbia. So I've been posting these videos, as a form of therapy to deal with the trauma of watching my little brother, Paul Kierans, with 64 with Down syndrome, be locked up by the BC New Democratic Party government for 588 days and then die in custody at Burnaby Hospital, alone among people who couldn't understand his communication. So it was, I was thinking about it today, and my one job in life has always been, since my brother was born, was to protect him. I remember as a little girl, the life expectancy for people with Down syndrome when he was born in 1958 was 6 years old. And my father, who has contributed a great deal to Canada, he designed the Churchill Falls hydroelectric plant in Labrador. He was a co-designer, which provides to this day clean hydroelectric power to the eastern half of North America. But my father decided that to hell with the doctors who told him and my mother to lock away Paul at Smith Falls Institution, and he by himself took the train from Toronto to Sudbury and brought Paul home. And then my mother started, because there was no government support for disabled people at that time, my mother started the first preschool for children, mentally handicapped children. But I recognized that it was my job to protect Paul. I remember going to Sudbury General with my dad when Paul would have been about 14 months old, and he had pneumonia, and he was in the children's ward at Sudbury General. And I would have been about 3.5 or 4. And I remember my father was looking for Paul, couldn't find him on the ward. And then he went out into the hallway, and Paul was sitting slumped over in a high chair, face down in a puddle of his own vomit. And at that time, a lot of the nurses were nuns, so dressed in nun uniforms. Catholic nuns, with the long black garb. And there's the full range. I've known many nuns in my lifetime, and there's a whole range of humanity among nuns, of the exact same spectrum as there is among all the rest of us. But it's a little. I was just up to my dad's pocket, like I was shorter than his belt, and I remember watching him tear a strip out of that nun nurse. Like he just went ballistic. And I knew that you were supposed to be in awe of nuns, and I could immediately see, my dad was modeling for me the correct behavior for abuse of a disabled person, how you respond correctly. And he scooped up Paul and brought him home from the Sudbury General Hospital. And Paul survived that catastrophe. So I used to take Paul to the Sudbury Library for children's story hour every Saturday morning. Because a little tiny girl, I would bring my disabled brother on the bus by myself. And kids would tease us and make fun of him. And I had to protect him. So my most important job my entire life was to protect my little brother. And in the end, I couldn't protect him at all. when I was up against the might of the New Democratic Party of British Columbia, the evil, dirty commie, who I helped institute and elect. I worked on Sven Robinson's campaign. He's first New Democratic Party Member of Parliament. In 1978, I worked for him. And I worked on his last campaign, too, after he stole the $5,000 ring. But, so remember, it's the dirty commie New Democratic Party that were the proponents, by the way. Tommy Douglas with the CCP or CCF was a proponent of euthanasia and eugenics of disabled people. Remember that?
Next stop.
They're evil.
Street.
Pure evil. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in religion. They are their own God. And the only morality to them is getting into power and holding on to it. So right now, for the people who are following this case at all, Paul died when I had an application. Every application I had to be appointed Paul's guardian failed. I failed at the court. Paul was dead 26 days after my appeal to the BC Court of Appeal was dismissed. He just gave up. But then, when my sister, the nun, the evil nun, 4,000 kilometers away in North Bay, Ontario, the fat, obese, frail, with a walker, evil nun, with whom I've never lived, and whom I don't know, but who's wealthier than God. And God forbid that the Catholic Church is paying for her legal expenses, which, it's dawned on me that maybe they are. So where things stand right now is when she found out that the police were investigating her for the fraudulent and forged power of attorney that she had over my little brother. She brought an application to have me declared a vexatious litigant. So Paul died when my application to visit him, to have him examined by psychiatrists, and her application to have me declared a vexatious litigant, which would take away all my civil rights. The little power that I have to defend myself would be removed. I wouldn't be able to represent even myself. But, so I'm fighting for you. I'm fighting for you guys. So where things stand right now is there was a judge, Mr. Justice Eidelman, had seized himself of all these applications, my application to visit Paul, have him examined by psychiatrists, and the evil nun's application to have me declared a vexatious litigant. So I accepted that, and I find out, as soon as my sister finds out that the police are investigating her for the fraudulent and forged power of attorney, Mr. Justice Eidelman is removed as the judge. I know this sounds complicated, but I think we've been before, I should keep track, but maybe 17 different judges. But he had seized himself, and I accepted that. I don't know what his feelings are. I don't know where he's going with this, but I accepted that. And he knew the whole story. I had explained it to him once, the most traumatic story of my life. And then as soon as my sister finds out that the police are investigating her, he's removed. And a judge who was formerly employed by the Department of Justice, the federal Department of Justice, all of a sudden seizes herself of this case. And she demands that we have another case management conference, which meant I had to take the 2-hour bus into Vancouver and 2-hour bus back. And she said, she asked why the hearing to have me declared a vexatious litigant was 5 days. And my sister's evil lawyer, Casey Deanshaw, says, oh, well, it's because Ms. Walker is disabled with a cardiac condition, and she has a medical letter saying that she can't appear in court for longer than 2 hours at a time. And this Judge Hoffman, who is the new judge, that mysteriously seizes. I mean, when a judge seizes himself of a matter, that's very serious. That means you don't have to worry about other judges being parachuted in to take over and to substitute their decision. You don't have to repeat yourself all over again. So this judge, Hoffman, basically says that I'm a liar. She says, well, I want to see that letter right now. I want to see the letter from the cardiologist. And I had no idea that she was going to take that position, and so I didn't have it with me. Although I suppose I could have pulled it up on my phone. But so right out of the gate, she calls me a liar, which does not bode well. So the hearing for me to restore visits with my brother, have him examined by a psychiatrist, and to have me declared a vexatious litigant is set now for November 18th. So not this coming Monday, but next Monday. And I worked all day on it yesterday. I spent, 8 hours solid working on it. So, but I'm going to win. I mean, I didn't win in time to help Paul, and he died under the most horrific circumstances you could imagine, or was killed. I think they sedated him to death. I know they removed all his medical supports. He was on a ventilator. He was recovering, but he was on a ventilator, had a catheter, had intravenous. The last time I saw him, after the nun found out that she was being investigated by the police, all of a sudden his medical supports are all removed. The ventilator was removed, the catheter was removed, intravenous was removed, and he looked dead to me. So within an hour of the evil nun finding out that she was being investigated by the police, my brother was dead. So I hope that's not too complicated. I'm just trying to bring you all up to date, especially Paul Fraser, who's so kindly donated to my GoFundMe all along. And just so you understand. But I have enough faith in our judicial system that I believe in the end we're going to be successful. God willing, my sister will go to prison. I mean, what I want to achieve is a change in the Patients' Property Act so that no guardian or committee or conservator is ever permitted to isolate and confine an incapable adult from his other loved ones again. That's called Paul's Law. It's already the law in 22 states in the United States because Peter Falk, the actor who was the star of the Columbo series, my favorite TV show ever, has a stroke in his 70s, and his second wife, out of spite and recrimination, retaliation, didn't permit his adult children to visit him. So they started the Peter Falk Foundation to change the law of adult guardianship across the United States, so that no guardian can isolate and confine an incapable adult from their other loved ones, which they often do. There's money issues, there's retaliation, there's spite, all of which was motivating my evil nun sister. So we'll know we have won when the Patients' Property Act of British Columbia and all relevant legislation and regulations are changed so that guardians and committees of incapable adults are never allowed to unilaterally. There was no medical evidence. You might wonder, did some social worker or psychologist, psychiatrist recommend that Paul be isolated, locked up, and confined away from me? No. I had evidence from 2 psychiatrists stating the opposite, that it would be in his best interest to have visits from me, his last surviving family member in Greater Vancouver. So that's where we're at on November 9th of 2024. You can still contribute to my GoFundMe account. And but most importantly, I'm looking for your prayers that we can change the law in British Columbia so that guardians of incapable adults are never allowed to lock up and isolate the incapable adult away from their other loved ones. That will be the win. That's the win we're looking for. So I don't know if you can see, we're in Coquitlam now. Actually, Port Coquitlam. But the most important thing is pray for us and wish me well. Everything's on track to be successful. And I have enough faith in I've seen the judicial system, you know. My grandfather, who was Ontario Superior Court Justice, used to say, well, he said two things. One is he would often quote Charles Dickens and say, the law is an ass. But he also said, the thing that I remember most is he always said, the wheels of justice grind exceedingly slow, but they grind exceedingly fine. And that's what's going to happen in this case. So I love you all. As I said, continue praying for us and for Paul. Paul's up in heaven. I know he's having fun with my brother Murray and my brother Harry and my mom and my dad and my sister Teresa. So pray for us. Take care, everybody. And remember to observe Remembrance Day, the 100,000 Canadians who died, and the infinitely more that who've suffered defending our freedoms. Defending the freedoms that were given to us by the Magna Carta over 800 years ago in 1208 against King John. So take care, everybody. I love you all.